David. Oh, David. Racing clock here. There we go. How are you, David? Howdy, Christian family. All of you say the smartest things. You all amaze me. I just sit back and soak up truth through online osmosis. I love you all. Signed, David. We love you, David. We love you. So uplifting is what you are. That's the right word. That is the correct word to use. Get that out of my ears. Miracles tonight. Something I'm very cynical about. So hopefully other people have more positivity to add to it. If you are watching this later or joining us for the first time, this is a topic discussion. We have a Discord every Tuesday. There is a poll that is voted upon, and whatever wins the poll is what we talk about. So the last one that won was miracles, talking about miracles. What are miracles? Are they still pertinent? Do we still do them? All of that fun stuff. I'm going to basically lay the groundwork for like the history of it biblically, some Old Testament stuff, some New Testament stuff, and then we'll see where it goes. But the Discord is a great place if you want to have deep conversations with smart people, and I'm not at all talking about me, but other guys and gals. There's a link to the Discord pinned to the live chat on Twitter. There's a link in the pinned comment on my profile. But we do a number of these live streams every week. Tuesday, like I said, is a topic discussion that is voted upon, and then whatever wins the vote, we do. Thursday is something extra canonical, so outside of the normal canon that we have, apocryphal or from a different culture. We did the Epic of Gilgamesh. We read Adam and Eve from the Apocrypha, and now we're reading the Book of Giants / Enoch. Saturday is game night in Discord. You join in on your phone and you're able to actually engage and like play the games. That's been fun. We just started that a few weeks ago. I've had a great time. It always goes south at some point, and it's very entertaining. And then Sunday is the canon, the strict, widely accepted biblical canon. We're doing everything in chronological order right now. So in actual order of events. And that's been good too. So we're going to wrap up Genesis this Sunday, I believe, unless something goes wrong. And then we'll keep moving along in actual order of events, which is always interesting and a good time. I wanted to say something too real quick before we start. I was thinking about Mikkel earlier today, and it just reminded me that I don't remember if it was a year ago or if it was 2 years ago, but I had like been away from YouTube and stuff for like 5 years, let everything die. And then when I started doing it again, it has to be 2 years ago now. I think, I don't know, Mikkel, if you remember, let me know. But it was me and Drew would just get on a live stream and just read and talk about the Bible, and nobody was there. Like nobody would listen. And we weren't really doing it for other people. We were just like having a good time talking to each other and let it stream. But I remember Mikkel just showed up one day and had all of this wild wisdom just dropped on us. And then he would just keep coming. And for a long time, it was like just Mikkel. And then we had Shannon come, and then like slowly there was this trickle of people. But Mikkel was like the OG of this last time around of starting things. And I was just thinking about that. Like, what would have been different if Mikkel hadn't have shown up? Maybe I would have stopped. Like, you never know. You never know. But Mikkel's been here, man, and he's had my back through all the phases of this crap show, way before Discord ever started, and all that stuff. I was just thinking about that. Mikkel, I love you. I appreciate you. And I was having deep thoughts about you earlier today. Now, miracles. We'll see where this goes. I figured we'd start where I like to start, but a lot of time forget to start, and that is got questions. I had to mess with some of the audio, so if the music is too loud or anything, please let me know, because I don't play it in my ears because it makes me want to go insane. So if it needs to be lower, if you guys just want it off, let me know. Gotquestions.org. I'll say it like I say it every time. It's a good source if you want a very biased answer to a Christian question. They have their own biases. You can go to the website. You can look at their About Us, read through it. They have theological biases, and it's very apparent when you read through things. Sometimes it matters, sometimes not so much. But I just want to skim through their stuff here real quick. So the biblical definition of a miracle per gotquestions.org would be something like this: an event that involves the direct and powerful action of God, transcending the ordinary laws of nature and defying common expectations of behavior. Miracles are extraordinary occurrences that can only be attributed to the supernatural work of God and demonstrate his involvement in human history. It's a decent explanation. God employs miracles in the Bible to reveal himself, his character, and his purpose to humans through phenomena that are not otherwise explained. And then they basically just give examples, which I'm sure I have most, if not all of these. So we'll cut it there. Sorry, I just got distracted by something. All right, so next slide. A surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by nature or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. These are definitions from like Webster and whatnot. A highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. An amazing product or achievement or an outstanding example of something. Now, some of the nitty-gritty. Examples of miracles in the Old Testament. You guys feel free to rudely interrupt me anytime. If you're not in the voice stage part, but you want to be, let us know. Ghost should be able to bring you up too. And I'm happy to cut off my stuff if ever we just want to talk about something, because mine is strictly biblical. So if we want to have a ideological discussion about it, or if you have a specific example that we could all ramble and talk about, I'm totally fine. So just cut me off. This would just be straight data. Examples of miracles in the Old Testament. I have 10. Creation of the universe, Genesis 1 through 2, a very obvious example. If you assume it's literal, then we get into that theological discussion. And if you don't, then is it an example of a miracle? Oh, there is a discussion there. But if you take it literal, 1 to 2 in Genesis, God created the heavens, the earth, and all living things in 6 days, demonstrating his omnipotence and creativity. Fair enough. The Great Flood, Genesis 7 through 8. God commanded Noah to build an ark to save his family, as well as all the animals from a worldwide flood, which he sent as judgment on humanity's wickedness. So you could say there's several miracles packed into one there, from the flood to the saving of, and then the reproduction of the animals and all that stuff. And I'm trying really hard not to go down a rabbit hole on that one. Number 3, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That'll be Genesis 19. God rained down fire and sulfur on the sinful cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, but spared Lot and his family, who fled under divine guidance. I would even argue that's probably a couple examples of miracles too. You've got a few examples in there. Pia said there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is though everything is a miracle. And she's quoting Albert Einstein. I've never heard that quote, and that's a very interesting quote. It's a very interesting quote. That's very philosophical. I like that. One as if nothing is a miracle, and the other as if everything is a miracle. That's extremely thought-provoking, actually. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. He said, I live like everything is a miracle. God is closest to us, I think, typo. I'm really glad he said that. That's a really, really interesting quote. David said, you can go ahead and like this video because it's already good. It's good because of y'all, not because of my horrible slides. But I'll get better. I'm learning some of the stuff. I'm learning how to use some of the stuff. I'm so technologically challenged since back in the day. It's a great quote, right? Mikkel just confirmed. It's a great quote. It's a fantastic quote. Number 4, the parting of the Red Sea. which I just got in a wild argument with somebody on X about. And if we have time, maybe we'll talk about it. But the parting of the Red Sea, Exodus 14, God had enabled Moses to part the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to then escape from Egypt, from their slavery, then close the sea on Pharaoh's pursuing army. So even there, a few miracles. Most of these so far are several miracles in one. Number 5, manna from heaven, Exodus 16. God miraculously provided manna, a bread-like substance, to feed the Israelites during their 40 years in the wilderness. Pretty obvious example. Number 6, water from the rock in Exodus 17, 1-7. When the Israelites were thirsty in the desert, God instructed Moses to strike a rock, and water flowed out to sustain the people. Number 7, the walls of Jericho falling. Joshua 6. The Israelites marched around the city of Jericho for 7 days, as God commanded, and on the 7th day, the walls miraculously collapsed. Number 8, Elisha and the widow's oil and flour. That's out of 1 Kings 17, 8-16. During a famine, God caused a widow's jar of flour and jug of oil to never run out. The ever-producing jug, sustaining her, her son, and Elisha. The fiery furnace from Daniel 3. This is a decent one. So we had they were thrown into the blazing furnace for refusing to worship the idol. Then God bestowed them with protection, and they emerged from the furnace unharmed, with not even the smell on their clothes, it said. And then the last one for the Old Testament that I have, but obviously the Old Testament is literally just miracle after miracle after miracle, if you really break it down. Another good example, again, if you take it literal, would be Jonah surviving the great fish, the whale, the fish, whatever. Jonah was swallowed by the great fish or the whale, depending on your translation. That, for some reason, is like a huge argument, as if it matters. After trying to flee from God's command, he survived in the fish for 3 days and nights before being vomited onto dry land. Now, a few from the New Testament. And it would be remiss of me to not say, try to notice differences between the miracles we see in the Old Testament versus, that's a good one, yeah. Don't forget the talking donkey. Fair enough. It's chock full of these. No, Patricia, we cannot hear you. I can't hear you, at least. Maybe try to leave and come back, or check your audio settings in Discord. Because I don't see you lighting up or anything either. So I think it's not even getting the audio from you in the first place. Nat, hey everyone, sorry I've been MIA, busy with newborn baby boy. Not an excuse. Not an excuse. It's just not. Totally kidding too, because I'm going to be right there with you in a few months. I hope you're doing good. I hope the baby's good. We're all very happy for you, and we definitely miss you, for sure. So get your life together. Just put the baby on the swing thing and come hang out. Go said, is a miracle what modern writers call deus ex machina, an improbable convenience to move the plot forward. There you are. Now I can hear
you. Yay. I was going to say something.
Do you remember?
Like, I think what I was going to say was how, like, for example, the Jonah fish situation.
Yeah.
How it can be taken as literal or not literal, and that changes whether it's a miracle or, like, it just adds the skepticism to it.
Right. Yeah. Same with Genesis. I mean, you could argue it for really any of them, but yeah, the more obvious ones would be like the creation story in Genesis, Jonah, the burning bush, the talking donkey. Were these things illustrations? Were they metaphors? Were they literal?
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. It kind of makes a difference for a lot of them. Definitely. It's something people got to think about. You got to think about it. If you take it literal, then that would be an example of a miracle. If you don't, it could still be a miracle that was expressed in a more whimsical way. Like, that's possible. Or it could be that it just wasn't a miracle at all, and it was expressed in a whimsical way that makes it come across as a miracle. It's interesting.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, do you think most people would consider like the manna falling from heaven during the Exodus to be a miracle?
I would. Yeah. Why do you ask? I feel like you have something in mind.
Well, I do because we feed our pets every day and they have no idea how that food arrives in their bowls. So
It's
that's a
true.
miracle to them, but it doesn't mean that it's like magic. There's a mechanism for that to happen.
True. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I don't
Depends on
personally.
their level of consciousness. Like some pets can see, oh, my owner's giving me the food, and then some maybe don't recognize that at all.
Well, I think they
Well, it's
all
like, yeah, they
know.
could recognize it, but
Right.
they still couldn't conceive of how it possibly arrived into the house, let alone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
So
but
why wouldn't the manna from heaven during the Exodus be exactly like that and all other miracles?
I
Like
was I was just
there's
gonna
a
say,
mechanism.
yeah. But so if you did that to that though, you'd have to do it to all of them, like you just said.
Yeah,
Things not
true.
explained.
Yeah. I mean, it's all for me. It always goes back to me being super annoying and saying this, but I think it all on some level boils down to we have human conception that relies on our senses. And so anything that lies outside of our senses, things we can experience, would technically, on some level, be a miracle. So all of these could just be reflections of that. These are things that are happening, call it on a different realm or whatever, in a different sect of reality that are obviously normal there. Like, what if God doing miracles? That's not a miracle from God's perspective.
That explains. That goes back to Pia's quote. Is like, it's everything or nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in a sense, for sure. But that's yeah. It's perspective. Like that becomes
Yeah.
to me a philosophical question of perspective. So to God, none of that is a miracle. That's just God doing God stuff. But to us, the pets who are being fed, it's miraculous. Like all of a sudden, this stuff is here. Where does it come from? What is it? And we're just sustained. I think it's a great point. Yeah, it's that's our perspective, which is extremely limited in the grand scope of things, in my opinion. I did pull up the definition. It's Deus ex machina, right? I think I'm saying that right, but I'm not the
Yeah, you said it
pronunciation.
right.
Okay, there we go. Beautiful. A Latin phrase that translates to a god from the machine. It's a plot device used in literature and theater to describe a sudden and unexpected resolution to a seemingly unsolvable problem. And so, what you had initially
Mhm.
said was, is that what a miracle is? An improbable convenience to move the plot forward. And you tied that in with the animal example. Yeah, I think that's a very simple way to explain it. I think it's a good way to explain it.
So like if we are in some type of narrative, then I could accept miracles, I guess, easier. But if we're in a narrative, it also brings up free will. Are we just actors being fed lines covertly and we don't realize it, or what? Like, I don't. It's hard to reconcile for me,
I mean,
and
could
there's definitely something I'm missing.
it be circumstantial, where miracles could be happening, but not all miracles you are required to engage with? Don't you think there are some potential miracles that because of your behaviors or actions, you don't end up as an individual engaging with because of something you chose to do or not do?
Yeah, that's super possible.
So
Um,
that kind of reconciles it, at least a bit, I think.
Well, if okay, so I guess there are different categories of miracle because healings seem to be what people think of first. And I'm at the point where I don't really believe in that. But other miracles like creation or some type of weird phenomena, I can get on board with that.
I get that. Yeah. So then it becomes like, where is the line?
Yeah, where is the line? Because what about these people who have like a lot of faith? You would say they're pious people and they have some type of ailment. I know several, and they went to healing meetings and all this stuff, and they were never healed. They always thought they were going to be healed. They had faith, etc. Why aren't they healed, but like someone else that did the same exact thing claims that they were healed? I think there's some shenanigans going on.
Which
I
then
can never find an answer to that question.
no, but that's like the root of the deepest theological questions on the planet. It takes you back to the like, why does the guy who's a complete asshole get to make millions and have a hot wife and like all good stuff? Check them all off, and then the
What if bad
8-year-old
things
down the
happen to
street.
innocent people?
It's that question, yeah. The 8-year-old got down the
Hmm.
street, gets cancer, and dies. Her family was good. They're very moral. They're Christian, and then she dies. Yeah, it's like it all goes back to that foundational thing. But you have the fallen world argument that if that's the case, it would account for some of it. What's irreconcilable to me is the underlying like thesis of Christianity that an all good and all powerful God made the world. That seems to be inherently, to some degree, if not entirely inherently, evil, or like foundationally evil. And in that foundational evil, we have to consistently try to do good, instead of the reverse, where everything was inherently good. But obviously we say it was, and then the fall of man. But everything inherently good, and then people have to like do the extra mile to commit evil. But that's not how it is. If everything is inherently evil, then to some degree it would make sense why bad things happen and why they happen often. If everything is inherently evil, you also then have to account for, well, then if God's doing miracles, he's picking and choosing, or God is not all powerful. There's some kind of limiting factor that causes an actual struggle between good and evil. It's like it's the weird, to me, contradiction in Christianity, where God is all good, controls everything, however evil happens, that we don't attribute to God, which to me says, okay, evil is pretty powerful then. Like evil has actually a fighting chance. If evil is winning, even just battles, maybe not wars. I don't know how you reconcile it. I really don't.
Did
Even
you
with
see
free
the
will.
video that Deplorable posted in the podcast topics about the pastor who had like something wrong with his voice and it just miraculously cured during a sermon?
No, where was that? Oh,
Uh,
for tonight, like in that section?
yeah, it
Okay.
was like podcast topics.
Okay, I got it here. Let me.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know who the pastor is. I haven't done any research on it.
Okay, let me see. Shut off the music. Turn up the volume here.
This preacher being healed while he speaks.
So one of his benefits is he heals all of my diseases. And in verse 4 he says, and he redeems my life from the pit. Now I like that verse just a whole lot. I have had, and you have had in times past, pit experiences.
He's starting to figure it out.
We've all had times when our life seemed to be in a pit, in a grave, and we didn't have an answer for
He had been like this for 2 years.
the pit we find ourselves in.
He's shaking.
And I don't understand this right
Are
now.
we supposed to hear this?
Yeah, can you not?
I can't. I don't know
Ghost.
if anybody else can.
Are you on YouTube or no?
You'd have to pull up YouTube and
No,
mute
I'm
your
not on
mic.
YouTube.
Okay, that's why. So any audio I play will only go through YouTube. Yeah, so you got to do it from there.
I'm but overwhelmed at the moment.
If you still believe Jesus heals, type amen. And for more videos like this, follow.
I got to be honest, I didn't fully grasp what just happened. Was his voice healing in real time?
Yeah, he essentially sounds like RFK, and then just like during, a few sentences or a paragraph or whatever, it started to just turn normal.
So I just like
But I don't know who that guy is, and
Right.
I wish Deplorable was here because I think he knows more about it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we get more, I would definitely be interested in looking too. I just immediately go like, there's a statistical probability that he would heal doing something, whether it was mowing his lawn, preaching a sermon, at the gym. Like if his voice was going to heal, it has to heal at some point. So maybe it's just a really low probability that it would happen in the middle of a sermon, but the probability is there nonetheless. But that's just like cynical me being cynical.
And I get it. Yeah.
It's hard though. Yeah, I wish. Hopefully, we can find out more from him later. I would be.
You're explaining it away, like Nat said in the comments.
What'd she say? Makes me think of how people say kids are more likely to see ghosts because they suspend reality easier. Maybe we are able to explain things away that could be miracles. I think there could be truth to that. I don't know if I fully believe that, but I absolutely understand the concept and like I'm very open to it. I think as a
It could also
child,
be the exact opposite too. We could be attributing it to be a miracle when it was like what you said, it was just probably going to happen anyways. And there's no way to know because we don't have time machines.
right? What do you think
Yeah.
about this though that Nat was saying how kids are more likely to see ghosts because they suspend reality easier?
Yeah, I think it's visual placebo. I think you can trick yourself into kind of it's pareidolia. I guess. I mean that's what I think, but
I mean,
I'm
me
not
too.
100% positive.
Too. I hate how cynical I am. But then I feel anytime I give into it, I get slapped in the face, and it ends up being garbage.
I'm pretty cynical on this particular topic, but I also realize that I don't know everything about it. So I mean, I leave room.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you got to. David said, "I believe God performs miracles in our lives, but acts anonymously. In other words, a miracle can be attributed to coincidence or nature, etc. Why? I don't know." Yeah, I live. Kat and I were talking about this last night. To some degree, we were. But like, I think there's a balance between like things that just happen because there is a statistical probability that a thing would happen. But I also think like God has some degree of a hand in the game. I just know the way I see that, and I won't explain, but the way I see it does not align with traditional Christianity. But it's because I've never been able to make it make sense within like the traditional Christian perspective. I just don't see logically how it works. So the only thing I could get to was, okay, well, throw my hands up. I'll never even begin to understand this because it just lies way outside of my possibility to understand. Outside of like traditional Christian perspectives, I think there are ways you can make it make sense, but it would be frowned upon by the Christian world. He said, "When I was pregnant and came home very tired, I fell asleep driving on a difficult road and never crashed, nor did I go off the road. God took care of me. This happened to me, honestly, not only one day." I actually kind of get that. Yeah. And so, is that God, like, not to, is that Jesus taking the wheel? Uh, or is it your subconscious facilities, picking up the small percentage that is still active when the rest of you is unconscious? I don't know. That would be the more cynical view.
But I can combat that, I guess, and
Okay.
say like maybe it's God working within her subconscious to make sure she doesn't drive off the road,
Right,
like
which
the
is
Holy Spirit within her.
and that's what people say. They'll say like the old medical argument where God heals people through medicine. That's become kind of like the answer for stuff. Well, God doesn't heal people by like growing back your limb, but God created doctors and God is fueling those doctors by the Spirit. And so all surgeries and everything are done by God just through people. For me, it's like, sure, but it's kind of a cop out to say like everything is being controlled by God. It's kind of a cop out, but maybe it's true. I'm not closed off to that idea. I just think it's like, well, the conversation's over then. Like there's nowhere else we can go if God is just controlling
Yeah.
everything through people, but it's a common answer.
It's a simple answer,
It's a simple
which is
answer.
hard to accept.
Yeah. I mean, it removes the philosophy aspect. And it's just like it's the old like because I said so. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right then. Why don't you tell everyone the context in which we discussed this, darling? Will you remind me? Because we've had very long conversations about this stuff the past few days. David said Isaiah 45:7 says, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Right. And there's a handful of verses like that. Kat, are you talking about you and I meeting and that being miraculous? I assume that's what it is. I assume that's what it is. And I believe in a degree of it, for sure. Like some things are just so low probability that you have to assume some kind of divine intervention took place. It's how much is that happening? In what circumstances is that happening? It's a very difficult thing to try to weigh out. That's all. It's just very hard. The power of love and the health in consequences. Perhaps some people are more sensitive of things in that nature, adults and children alike. That's what people say, right? Like some people are sensitive to the spiritual world, is how they put it. I don't know about that. Like being fine-tuned to the miraculous. That's an interesting way to say that.
Like John Locke.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, the fine-tuning is, for anybody who doesn't know, it's like the kind of the basis foundational answer for how this world came to be. That everything in physics, everything in the physical world is finely tuned so much so that the probability of this happening by accident is basically zero. I actually learned recently that most physicists, quote unquote, check it yourself, but no longer believe in the Big Bang Theory as the origin. It's kind of been abandoned. And they've gone back to saying, I don't know. We don't really know.
Really?
Yeah. Which is great because it was kind of a silly ass argument, in my opinion. But fine tuned to the miraculous is kind of interesting too, because maybe it's similar to that. If this world came into creation finely tuned, everything being just so, maybe the real miracles, quote unquote, are kind of like that, where it's everything is just so. Something that's mathematical probability is so low that it's almost impossible. Those types of things. I just wonder how often that actually happens. And I do wonder cynically, the healings we saw in the Bible, like Ghost was saying in the very beginning, where did that go? Why is that gone? Why can we never prove this really at all? Tough. That's a tough one for me. All right. Are there any more of these that are worth? Well, we didn't do any of these. All right. Well, I'm going to run through these. And then if you guys want, you can rudely interrupt me again and we can go off on something that is not straight Bible. 10 of these New Testament. Now, that's what I was saying before we went off on a big tangent, which is very good. Is like try to keep in mind the differences because there are noticeable differences between the miracles, quote unquote, that happen in the Old Testament versus the miracles that we see in the New Testament. A lot of the Old Testament ones, there seems to be, in my opinion, this is my perspective, there seems to be a separation between the divine and humanity in terms of miracles. Definitely not always, but more so than the New Testament. The New Testament is much more direct, in my opinion, other than a few examples that seem relatively far removed. Let's see if you notice anything in the difference. So the first one I have was turning water into wine, John 2:1-11. This was at the wedding in Cana. Jesus performed his first recorded miracle by transforming water into wine, which was a demonstration of his divinity and care for people, I guess you could say. Then you have the feeding of the 5,000 out of all the Gospels, but the number is different depending on the Gospel. With just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, Jesus miraculously fed a crowd of over 5,000 people. This is like probably the most well-known miracle in the New Testament. So then same type of thing. Is that literal? Is that emphasized to be illustrative in nature, to prove a point, to really show that this was the guy and he was doing crazy things? Third one, healing the paralyzed man. This is out of Mark 2. Jesus healed a paralyzed man who was lowered through a roof to reach him, demonstrating his authority to forgive sins as well as heal the body. Number 4, calming the storm. Another one of like the Bible school book stories that everybody knows. This is when he rebuked the wind as well as the waves during a storm on the Sea of Galilee. showing his command over nature. What's up, love? Oh, okay. Number 5, walking on water. That's got to be the most famous one. Matthew, Mark, and John. This is absent from Luke. Jesus walked on the surface of the Sea of Galilee, and when he stepped out to join him, he enabled Peter to walk briefly before rescuing him from sinking. Miracle on miracle, you could say. Another super famous one, raising Lazarus. Jesus called Lazarus out of the tomb 4 days after his death, proving his power over life and death. That's a big one. Bringing people back to life. Big deal. Number 7, healing the woman with the issue of blood. That's out of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. A woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years was healed instantly when she touched Jesus' cloak, showing the power of faith and his compassion. All of these are very direct, in my opinion, which is what I was kind of getting at. Whereas in the Old Testament, we had things like the flood. It's direct still, but less so. The burning bush is direct still, but kind of less so. But maybe it's just the personal aspect that I'm mentally getting stuck on. Maybe because it's Jesus, I'm just I'm taking it more personal. Maybe that's it. Giving sight to the blind man in John 9, that was number 8. Jesus healed a man born blind by applying mud made from his spit and washing it away. One kind of interesting thing is if you look through the Gospels, and this is unrelated but kind of related. If you look through the Gospels at Jesus's miracles, this is something that I've done where you pull every miraculous event that Jesus did from all of the Gospels, and you compare just those events. And you can kind of see that as the Gospels were produced in time, the telling of the stories of miracles become more whimsical is not the right word, more strong, the telling at the very least. But like this was a good example with the blind man. Here he had to use mud and spit in order to restore the sight of the man. In some of the later produced gospel accounts, he didn't have to do that. So the question I've always had is, was the mud and the spit required? Is that something that John just added to make it memorable or make it stand out? Or did the way Jesus was doing miracles, did he improve at it? Or was there a strategy? It's just kind of an interesting thing that you can see. The miracles become more blunt, like Jesus snapped and it was done. Versus in the beginning, it seems like Jesus kind of had to do some stuff to make the miracles happen. It's something interesting to look at if you never have. Maybe it's a placebo effect, but it's good. In reference to what? Oh, every miracle occurred to bring well-being. Yeah. It was all for the good of humanity to some degree. Nat said, I think he did it for the theater of it all. Right, so then why not later, though? Why in later miracles was it just like snap done? Why no theatrics then? I think it's a good answer, though. Or you mean John wrote it that way? Because I would possibly lean that way. That he wanted the drama of it, which is understandable. And it's not the only time in Scripture we see that kind of thing. Number 9, the resurrection of Jesus. I feel like we don't really need to talk about that one. That's obviously miraculous. And then the conversion of Saul to Paul. I debated about putting this in or not, but I think it's at least miraculous on some account. At the very least, the vision Paul had on Damascus. But I think the conversion itself is also potentially miraculous, just because of who Paul was, being one of the worst, and then coming around into his apostolic glory, you could say. I think it's pretty miraculous. If it's placebo, then it could be argued that is still from God because God created the placebo mechanism. It's infinite regression. These conversations just infinitely regress to God did it, which very well might be true. But it just does not satisfy me at all.
You want to be more logical about it.
I do. Or at the very least, philosophical. I want to at least philosophically understand to some degree. Yeah. But yeah, logic for sure. That's definitely a pitfall for me, as I want everything to make sense logically. I want to be able to put it on a spreadsheet and see the data, and it just doesn't
I have a
work out that
question
way.
for you.
Yeah, go.
Do you believe like childbirth is a miracle, or like giving birth, pregnancy, the whole thing?
So good philosophical question. Oh, hi, Snake. I do, but I can also explain it away. So like on one hand, that is just a natural, normal part of this reality. Like all living things give birth in some manner, but all animals, all mammals at the very least, they give birth. They get pregnant, they give birth. All of them. It might look different, but it's the same thing. So is that miraculous by definition? No. But if you trace it back, then yeah, like the concept is miraculous. Life
Mm-hmm.
begetting new life is miraculous. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But then is that God? Or is that just the design? Which by the
The
end of it
design of it.
is
Yeah.
God. Yeah. Yeah. But no, good question. For sure. God created everything. That's why he has no weakness. But is that true?
'Cause there's like an awe, like when you step back and you think about it, you're like in awe of like how it all exists.
Oh
Like,
my God.
wow.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's a miracle. Like
All the
life is a
time.
miracle.
All the time. Think about just like the ecosystem in general. The ecosystem and differing ecosystems. Like how if you
Mm-hmm.
were to take this snake that Kat just randomly handed me, if you were to take this snake and put it somewhere like in Antarctica, it would die because it is not attuned to that ecosystem. Like everything living is so fine tuned to
Yeah.
whatever its circumstances are. So much so that life ceases to exist should it be put in the wrong ecosystem. The fact that like if all the bees died, everything would die because everything is so intricately tied together. Why conservation is so important, and not like global warming, but like don't kill all of the animals, don't take all the bees out. Like we need everything because everything is kind of systematically tied together to function. And if too much of anything really dies, it could be the
Yeah.
end of everything. Yeah, that type of stuff. I think about it all the time. It's like it keeps me awake at night.
I had a thought.
Go.
So if a miracle inherently has some type of improbable quality, like that's what makes it a miracle because it's so improbable, then how could childbirth be a miracle? Because it's just like it's a predictable mechanism. If you do A, B, and C, then you're gonna get D.
Right. That was my first point. Is that if on its face, no, because it happens all the time. It's just the way this reality was designed. But if I really think about it on more of a philosophical level, like, yeah, that's incredible. Life begetting entirely new life that will live its own individual life with its own consciousness and its own spirit. Like, that seems miraculous, but by definition, no, like, it wouldn't be. That is just how life works.
So like it depends on the perspective of okay. So if we come from some infinitesimally small dot that just decided to fart one day and now we have the universe, then childbirth is extremely miraculous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not if the universe is a Rube Goldberg machine and God just set it up to work the way it did. So it relies on where do we come from, really,
Right.
to determine what's a miracle and what isn't.
Right. Right. It's a part of why she just left me here with this thing. It's a part of why I find like the Gnostic origin beliefs so interesting because I think it opens up a lot more possibilities to think about in terms of this type of topic. And what they believe, like in a very rudimentary sense, is something evil created this earth, not Yahweh, not God. Something evil. So everything born in it is then inherently evil. And there's this cosmic battle going on all the time. And God is not as perfect and all powerful and all in control as like the normal Christian perspective. You actually have this push and pull of good and evil. It's not just God is all good and Satan is no adversary at all. evil is actually an adversary, and there's actually a battle, and it's actually hard. And everybody is inherently born evil because they don't have the original sin story, because they just believe everybody was born by something evil, so they are inherently evil. So then throughout the course of any individual's life, it's constantly a battle between God and, call it, Satan, but they believe differently. But God and Satan, evil and good. And so any good thing that happens could be seen as miraculous because it goes against the actual design of the earth. But in the normal Christian perspective, Ghost is right. Like, that's not miraculous. In my opinion, like, very plainly. You could add details and maybe get there. But the Gnostics, like, good would inherently be something miraculous because it goes against the nature of this reality from the way that they see it. It's a very interesting perspective. Yeah.
I
I
haven't
think
heard that.
we'll do something on Gnosticism. We're gonna do something on Marcion soon, which is very much tied to Gnosticism, but we'll do something soon. But it's really interesting, and the Gnostic belief really opens up a lot of the things that we've like tried to talk about, like had the problem of evil. A lot of these big topics for Christians that we can't quite make sense of because of the Christian perspective immediately become very easy to understand. We're like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. The problem of evil immediately makes sense from the Gnostic view because everything is inherently evil. That which created this earth is evil. So then evil happening here makes perfect sense. If God is in constant battle with evil, the push and pull, it accounts for sin nature without the fall being required because everybody was created evil. And it accounts for the fact that like bad things happen to good people. Kids die. Everybody's inherently evil. It's a constant battle every single day for you to try to stay in touch with God because he's fighting for your attention and control. It opens up a lot. It's very interesting. And we'll definitely talk about it at some point. Ruth. Ruth said, would it be considered a miraculous death when Ananias and that was my example. That was one of the ones I had in my head when I was saying she's talking about Ananias and Sapphira fell dead after being dishonest about the Holy Spirit. So quick story. What had happened was they had essentially told the church that they were going to sell their land, and they told the church it was going to be for this amount of money, X amount of money, $100,000, whatever. When they go to sell it, they end up making more money. But when they go to the church, they still give them the money they told them they were going to give them, even though they made more. So they kept the difference as kind of a profit. Everybody was very upset about this, and God struck both of them dead in kind of a brutal, ruthless way. Is that an example of a miracle? And I think yes. And for me, it was one of the ones that is rather disconnected because Jesus wasn't really a part of it. The apostles didn't do something, like they weren't casting out a demon, hand on the forehead. It was just something that kind of happened, like God did it. There's no direct conversation or interaction per se. So yeah, I would say so. But it seems more like what we see with the Old Testament, where some of these things that just happen. The earth is flooded. God says, God does, but he's not like really engaging personally with humanity. That to me is very similar. I'm glad you said it. I had it in my head and then forgot about it. Rube Goldberg, machine. What if somebody asked for it? As someone who just gave birth, I struggle with that one. Everyone calls it a miracle or says I'm a badass mama. But like, it doesn't feel that way. It's just something I had to get done. Which is also a fair perspective, I think. And in a sense is definitely true. Like that's a thing that women do. Like you produce life. It's an insane thing. It's a wildly important thing. But like that's how we're here. So it's obviously normal. It can still be amazing and normal though. But is it a miracle? I don't know. I think definitionally it's an argument. It seems to me that God has a weakness. Us, his children. Speaking as a parent myself. Yeah. Agreed. Weakness or a positive love attribute? It's a valid question. Nat also said, it doesn't feel like a miracle since it's such a medical thing, speaking about birth again. But then I also see tiny little ears and are perfectly formed in my body from the food I ate, and that kind of feels miraculous. I think big picture, it's miraculous. If you have the Gnostic view, it's totally miraculous. Bringing life that is good, especially if you then raise the child to be good, that would be miraculous. But I think even like normal Christian perspective, big picture, it's a miraculous thing. It is, but it also is normal because it happens every day.
The devil's in the details.
The devil's in details. Yeah. David said,
Things
"Great."
get more skeptical the more deeper you look into it.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. Always, 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 always. But sometimes that's good.
Yeah.
David said, "Great comment, Ruth. That was an act of God, and it was out of the ordinary, so it could be perceived as a miracle." Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the only, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the only time in any of the New Testament accounts where seemingly Yahweh does anything like that. And I think, actually, I think it's one of the only times in the entire canon, the Old Testament and the New Testament, where God specifically and strictly, like, as himself, strikes somebody dead. If anybody has any other examples of that, like off the top of your head, throw it out for me.
We turned somebody into a pillar of salt, right?
Pillar of salt, yeah, that's fair. Fair. But do we have any examples of him, like, because the verbiage is very clear that he struck one dead and then struck the other dead. And I'm trying to think if there are any examples of that. I'm not sure that there are any. Somebody correct me. After reading how the egg chooses the sperm, I believe that's that's a miracle of some sort. I think on some level, yes, but like Ghost was saying earlier, if it's something that happens normally, can it be called a miracle, or do we need to find a different word for that? Because a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws. So I think we need a different word for these things. Like having a child would not by definition be a miracle, regardless of our perception or philosophy. It doesn't fit the definition. A highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. It just doesn't definitionally work. We have to
I
think of
have
a
a
different
different
word.
perspective on that. Like, so the fact that you have to be in a certain part of your cycle to even conceive, and then there's only one sperm, right, that they're going to choose out of like a million. So it is kind of improbable based on the fact that there's only a few days out of a month, every month, and there's only one sperm that's chosen. So it's more improbable when you think about it from that way.
So fair. By definition, too
Is
fair.
chosen the best word, though?
Oh, that's a good question.
Sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
I said is chosen the best word because if it's just like if it's throwing millions of sperm at it, it's basically just to kind of up increase the probability of conception. It's not like a smart egg like chose a sperm. I would have to see something on that to believe that.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. Does it choose, or are we just looking again at probability and math? If
It's
enough
like if
go
you have
out,
a bullseye up on the wall and then you just shoot a bunch of like a shotgun at it and it's buckshot, then chances are it's going to hit somewhere close to the bullseye the
yeah,
more you do it.
yeah, you'll eventually get it. You'll eventually get it. Yeah, it's a fair point. So, like, on one hand, I want to give it to you, Patricia, because I definitely get what you're saying. In a sense, maybe it would fit to definition too, but I think we do end
It
up
is like a million. It
defaulting.
is millions of sperm, so it's kind of like a lot.
So it's
I mean, I
it's
don't know.
scattershot.
It's a
Fish in a
ton,
barrel.
whatever.
Fish in a barrel. Eventually, mathematically, probabilistically, it's bound to happen if all conditions are right. So as long as somebody's not infertile and all that stuff. But even all that aside, it would fail by the standard of definition 1, which would be something that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws. And birth is. Getting pregnant is. So I think that was a good argument, but I think maybe it doesn't stand the test.
Well, I think the millions of sperm is more probable than one egg. So I don't know. Maybe it's on us. Maybe we're the miracle. The women are the miracle because we're less probable.
Maybe
Because our cycles are more finicky, where you
yeah.
guys are very stable.
I mean, that's a fair point. Yeah, on the woman's side, it is more, but you're not doing any. I don't know. That's an interesting point, though. Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. That's fair to say. After reading How the Egg Chooses, I read that. Go said, I think this one is the only topics that gives me a headache. I still like talking about it, though. Mikkel, weakness or a positive love attribute? We know that undoubtedly. L, wait, who's that? Oh, why do they let usernames be up to 50 characters? Said, it's highly unlikely I will ever win the lottery, but it's expected that someone will. Right. Right. Like somebody is going to. Somebody always does. Is that a miracle? If somebody's going to win every time they have a lottery, is winning the lottery a miracle? Or is you winning the lottery a miracle? The lottery being won is almost guaranteed. But each individual person from themselves winning, probability drops to extraordinarily low. It's a good example.
The people are like the sperm, and the lottery are like the egg.
Yes, the sperm wins the lottery. That is a good example. I'm glad you threw that out there. It's also the longest username I've ever seen on YouTube, so congrats on that. It must have been a big ass dartboard, and that's why it took almost 8 years. Speaking to her pregnancy. Mikkel said, I wouldn't consider it chosen, but who knows what science may discover in the future with all advances with AI technology in regards to the human reproductive process. Yeah, I mean, chosen kind of indicates will or consciousness on some degree, or does it? Does anything living unconsciously choose something? I suppose, yeah.
I kind of think the system itself is the miracle, not really the things that are happening in the system, but just the fact that there is this. That's why I brought up the Rube Goldberg machine,
Mm-hmm.
because the system still has to be set up prior to anything happening. And that's the miracle to me, not necessarily each individual piece falling over.
So, okay. So, I mean, fair, sure. So once the miraculous system is set into motion, though, can there be micro miraculous things that happen? I think that's like the weeds that we're trying to be lost in. The system itself miraculous, but then micro miracles from there within the system.
I mean, I would say they would absolutely have to be possible, but I just don't know. I don't know.
So let me ask you this, and I guess Patricia too, and anybody else in the YouTube chat. What would it take for you to see or experience that would make you just throw your hands up and be like, I'm sold? Miracles are real. They still happen today. I'm absolutely convinced I would burn at the stake for this belief. Like, what would it take? I don't know for me what it would.
Some type of component of predictability.
So something that could be repeated.
Yeah, because if we live in a mechanistic universe, then it would have to be something that could either be induced by doing something, or it's like the ask and you shall receive thing. Like there has to be a mechanism for it. Otherwise, I can't, it's hard for me to accept. And if I don't know what the mechanism is, then I just file it away in the I'm not sure category. And then I just tend not to really think about it because I don't feel like there's a conclusion that can be made.
If it becomes repeatable or is repeated, wouldn't it technically cease to be a miracle? Yeah, I mean that would defy the definition. At least the
Well,
definition that
what
we're
about
functioning off
childbirth?
of. Well, right, but I've kind of like, at least my perspective, I've concluded that that is not a miracle. By definition, it's not. It feels like one, but by definition, it would not qualify. So I guess by that same definition, what you're saying would not qualify to me either.
But it has to be a miracle if we're here because a star exploded or whatever.
Right. But that would
Then it
be
would become a miracle.
for sure, because that would be an inexplicable by nature or scientific law event. It would be highly improbable or extraordinary. Uh, that would bring very welcome consequences. So I think that one event could be seen as a miracle. But then are we just being
So
semantic now?
okay, I think I thought of like a way to explain it.
Okay.
If a billion people have their mind set on a particular outcome and they all pray for it, and it only happens for say 1,000 people, and it doesn't happen for the rest of them, those 1,000 people will have a confirmation bias, and then they'll get online and say, "This is what I expected, and this is what happened." It's a miracle, but it was all just due to probability, and there's no way to confirm the actual source or cause of the thing that happened.
Right.
And that's what drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with that's exactly how I see it. That's exactly how I see it. I think it all can just be easily explained as probability. If 100,000 of you prayed for thing, it makes sense probability wise, mathematically, that 100 of you would get the thing. That's not miraculous. That's how I see like most of it. Oh, thank God I got this dumbest example. I got the best parking space at church. Well, no shit. Somebody was going to. Somebody was going to. So based on what time you left the house, I'm not surprised that you got it. And extrapolate that to other situations, and I feel like it accounts for a lot of the stuff. What it wouldn't account for is something like an arm growing back, or a child who just died for 10 minutes, their heart suddenly starting again. Like those are the things that I think, should they happen, it would be really hard for me to explain them away. But I still would. You know, if it's one time and I never see it again, never hear of it again, I would personally explain it away. I would be cynical about it. Weird stuff happens. You know, we've seen it. But then the moment it becomes repeatable or repeated, by definition, it ceases to be a miracle at that point, which is a conundrum of sorts. David said, all acts of God are miracles. It's a subjective act to rank and categorize the miracle as nature or supernatural. That's a great point. Yeah.
I get really depressed if I don't think everything's a miracle.
But I mean, on some sense, it is. Like Ghost was saying, and I think it's totally right. I'm just being an ass because I want more. But he's saying the system itself that we function in is miraculous, and I totally agree. Whether that was a star blowing up or whether that was some divine being outside of this reality creating it, either way, that is miraculous by definition and in perception and emotion. So I think it is, and you should live that way. But if we're going to be nitpicky, the micro miracles, after the initial systematic miracle that created this everything, all of the micro miracles is now like what's up for debate, in a sense. Is this a miracle? Is that not a miracle? Do these micro miracles happen, or can all of them to some degree be explained by math and probability? That's what I
Okay.
think is tougher.
Let
Go
me run,
ahead.
let me run this by you.
Okay.
Okay, so I had an infection in my blood that left me with a abscess in my spine that they did not catch until way too late. So I was pretty much already numb from the waist down by the time I got to the hospital and had to have surgery, which left me paralyzed. And they told me that after 2 years, I went and got the little nerve test and everything, and they told me there's no way that my legs are gonna there's no hope. There's no walking again. I'm gonna be paralyzed for the for the rest. I'm not gonna get feeling back or anything. I have regained feeling back in my legs, and I'm starting to get movement back at this point.
Wow.
And they gave me no chance at all. So I mean, I perceive it as a miracle, but then again, I think it's also built into the system. So like, it's all a miracle. And like,
Yeah.
So do you think is there any part of you that could explain what happened by reason and scientific law? Like, do you think things sometimes your body just healed? Do you think maybe sometimes doctors are just wrong? And I'm just playing devil's advocate, but like,
that, yeah,
go ahead.
quite a few years back, I realized, wait a minute, the doctors might be full of, but
Right.
yeah, and started seeing all the false beliefs that they were building the whole system on. And yeah, I think they're wrong. I think the doubt that they place in our minds telling us that could definitely just like manifest it into reality
Oh, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
ultimately. Because once I lost the doubt is when everything started to like pick up.
Yeah. I mean, and that's been proven that like placebo is a real thing. You deluding yourself into being sick. People actually do that where they're not sick, but they're being told they're sick and they become sick. And the reverse is also definitely true. So I just like back to the miracle. Maybe that's an example of a miracle. Maybe it's an example of doctors being wrong. Maybe it's an example of doctors being right, but then your specific human body doing something biologically that went against what the doctors thought would happen. Because doctors just function off of math and probability too. Like that's their entire job. Based on how many cases we've seen of the flu, X, Y, and Z is most likely to happen. And then probabilistically, they're either going to be right or wrong. They don't have like some magical thing. Like you're never going to feel your legs again. Because even in some scenarios where all of those boxes are checked, the person ends up walking. So I think,
Right.
and that's me just explaining everything away. But
I think it's always possible, but I think it stems from the mind. Like the stuff that happens in our physical body, I think it's something happening in our mind first.
yeah, I think at least a good bit of it for sure. At least a part of it for sure. But the second part of that, and I don't know if it's right to bring this up, but the second part of that is then if that did happen as a miracle, why you and not Jimbo down the street? It brings us back to that question, which is equally as difficult. Ruth, you should be able to join now. I just saw your hand, so sorry if you were sitting there for a while.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to like talk about my brother when he was 7 years old. He was hit by a car. And I guess we all look at the way he is now as a miracle, because the doctors thought he was going to be in a vegetative state for the rest of whatever life they thought he might have left, and here he is almost 65 years old. And wait a minute, is he 65? No, he's 8 years older than me. Sorry, he's like 62. um Anyways, it's he's been my mom sent him, like took him to I don't know how many healing conventions. Like back in the 70s there was the Catherine Kuhlman, and then who cropped up next? Benny Hinn.
Mm.
He was taken to countless healing services and nothing would ever happen, ever. Like, and that and he's a believer. He believes in God. He's a Christian. And for someone to believe and be raised to believe that healing is a real thing and it's going to happen if you have enough faith, you will be healed 100% instantly. And nothing ever happened. Like if anybody had the biggest faith, it was like my mom and my brother. And like he's mostly in a wheelchair now, because he's gotten older. But it is a miracle. He's walking and talking, and he remembers every single lyric to every single country song ever written. Like he's smart. He made it at least to 1 year in college, but his short-term memory was really bad and couldn't do tests really well. But I look at him as a miracle being alive today. He wasn't healed, but it's a miracle he's alive, talking, smart, loves to tell jokes, loves to sing. He's been in the barber shoppers. I mean, that's how I look at miracles, because like Ghost said, like I agree with him, like for miraculous healings. I don't know, I guess I just talk from my own experience and things that I've witnessed, that I really don't think miraculous healings happen. I have not witnessed any. I have been to many services. I've seen shenanigans, the false preachers and the ones that blow into the microphone and say that's the power of God is going through you. I like, as far as the healing things go, I mean, I know people can recover from something that, and come a long way from where they were, but like when you look at a healing, it's instantaneous and complete and whole, right? Like, would God halfway heal someone? I, you know,
Right.
I have a lot of issues with that just because of, what I've gone through personally, and then seeing my mom who refused to get hip replacement surgeries when she so desperately needed them because she was waiting for God to heal her, and spent years in excruciating pain,
And then is God
you
playing
know.
favorites? You have to also answer at that point. If we're doing these miraculous, pushing on your forehead and yelling hallelujah, and all of a sudden somebody is medically healed, this answer, this brings up a lot of theological questions that you then have to wrestle with, which is why them? Why is God playing favorites? Why does it seem like God just happens to heal a lot of Pentecostals and charismatic Christians, but doesn't really care about the Lutherans, doesn't really care about the Catholics, not the Orthodox, just the ones who are doing somersaults and ripping their shirt off and stuff? That seems to, for some reason, evict from God this healing nature. He just gets in a really healy mood when those types of people are doing stuff. It's problematic at the very least, in my opinion.
Do those people like believe that they're being healed, or are they
Oh
actually
yeah.
putting on an act?
No, so my opinion, I think the pastors 100% understand they're con artists. Maybe some of them think they're actually doing it, benefit of the doubt, but I think the major ones like the Benny Hans and whatnot, I think they're absolute scum of the earth con men. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, placebo is a real thing. So I think there are probably plenty of cases where somebody says they're struggling with anxiety, something less, medically obvious, not an amputee and they get the arm back. Like anxiety, I think you could temporarily get somebody to believe that they no longer have anxiety. I don't believe that it stays away forever because somebody pushed on your forehead and spit in your face, but I think maybe temporarily they were like, felt better, But I think the pastors are scam artists and know it, and I think the people are, I think they're, I think they're really ignorant and hopeful, and so they buy into it. Just
They
like all
spit
of,
on their face?
no, it's just being an asshole. But like they'll put
Okay.
their hand on their forehead
I
and
wouldn't be
push them
surprised.
and do the back roll and the whole nine. I'm sure at some point somebody spit on somebody's face. I would not be surprised.
I have to tell you a personal experience real quick.
Okay.
Years ago, I was friends with these guys that I worked with, and they were singers, really good singers at this Pentecostal church. So I started going to their church, and I got my family to start going and everything. But I went up for prayer one time because I did need prayer, and my family life wasn't the greatest, and so I went up for prayer. But I was watching the preacher pray over people, and I noticed how there were spotters behind the people that he was praying for, and I noticed that he was physically like pushing on their head so that they would like lose their balance and fall backwards into the spotter's hand.
Oh, wow.
So I went up there for prayer and I braced myself, and I'm like, if I'm going to fall over, it's going to be the Holy Spirit, not this minister like making me fall over by pushing on my forehead. And lo and behold, I didn't fall over. And it's just my whole experience in that church. I like ran away, like I was being chased by the devil. I ran away from that church because it was uh
Oh, it's
like
horrendous.
I could go on.
Yeah, they're
I could
praying.
go on and on about that
We've
place,
done
but
we've done a few back when Tuesdays were on Thursday. We had done a few of the topic discussions on like the charismatic Pentecostal kind of, and no judgment, but like that side of Christianity, and it ties into the speaking in tongues thing, and all that. But we've talked about it. We've played some videos where just like things that infuriate me. But I think the majority of it is people who are genuinely just so lost. They're so hopeful inside. They're so unhappy with their lives that like they'll cling on to anything. It's the same type of people that get conned by other things. Like anything that offers the hope that they're lacking, that feeling that'll fill the void. And this is what con men prey on in every aspect of life. It is what con men prey on in and out of religion. It's just how it works. So I think people have figured that out, and all of these terrible men who were probably, door-to-door knife salesmen prior to being a pastor, come into the charismatic side of things, and they see it as a very good con. And so they do that. And then again, like I think some of them truly believe it. I think they think they're healing people. We have somebody that just jumped in a minute ago that said he or she said, "Move, I got this." It said, "I've healed dozens and I've never even been a member of a church or given any sermons." That if there is a God, there is healing, period. I'm on my way out the door, but I've had a fever instantly healed, back pain, broken ankle, and a miracle that made the news. You don't see healing because you're not living the Christian life. Ooh, shots fired. There is a sowing and reaping effect. I didn't know that, so I'm glad you let me know. How are you loving God? I'm off to work, but I'll check the channel out. So check it out and check out the Discord, because that's where maybe we could continue this conversation. I would appreciate that. I would like to, genuinely, no sarcasm at all, I would like to hear about some of the miracles. Like, that's why we're here tonight. So I would really like to hear about that. So if you're down, when you get done with work, there's a link to Discord in all the descriptions of the videos, top of the chat there too. I'd love to hear more about that, and maybe we can have a follow-up to this. No sarcasm, no gotcha. I'm being extremely genuine. I would definitely like to discuss that more. We're very interested. That's why we're here. All right, I missed
Way home.
Way Home. Me too. I want to hear Move, I Got This story. Yeah, we're all here for you. I would love if you joined and we got more into this. Someone please tell my husband I'm on the way home. Thanks. All right. When I hear the little notification go off, I'll wrap up. I missed a few up here though. I know you struggle with this one, Joe, but we as Catholics get to witness a miracle in the Eucharist every single week, which I think is pretty cool. Fair enough, but by our definition of miracle, it's not a miracle because it's not improbable if it happens every week. It's not extraordinary. Well, actually, it's extraordinary. Fair enough. But it is not inexplicable because you have a way of explaining it. But you can't by scientific law. If it's not explicable by natural or scientific law, actually, yeah. God dang. You win. The Catholics win again. Damn it. You could call it miraculous. You would fail at definition 2. It's not highly improbable if it happens every Sunday and happens in every church that happens to be Catholic. So we'd
The
fail at
reason
number
for
2.
the Eucharist
What's
is
that?
the concept, again, like you said, like the concept is miraculous.
Say the beginning again. You cut out the very first part.
Like the concept is miraculous.
Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about all that more because this idea of like the concept being miraculous. So then, when does it become not miraculous? Is it just semantics where I'm just getting caught on this repeated nature of it? Can something be miraculous every time it happens and happen consistently? Is it miraculous just because it's inexplicable by scientific or natural law? Because if that's the case, then these things could be miraculous repeatedly. Like the Eucharist could be miraculous repeatedly because it's inexplicable by natural or scientific law, whereas something like birth could not be miraculous because we can't explain it by natural and scientific law. Huh. Great example, Nat. I don't struggle with it. I don't read the text that way. I don't read the transubstantiation being literal. I get it, and I actually respect it a lot. It's just I just can't exegetically. I don't agree with it. But I'm a big supporter of the Catholics far more than I am of 90% of Protestant denominations. At least you guys try to hold on to things and you stand by, for the most part, what you believe. Nat also said earlier, it's also a bit medical mystery that it's proven the placebo effect can apply even when the patient is fully aware of the placebo. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Because isn't that kind of contradicting? If you know you're being lied to, how would your brain then trick you into believing the thing or having the thing happen? I'm gonna look that up. I didn't know that, but I'm having a hard time like logically grasp that. I'm having a hard time logically grasping that. It's very interesting. If you're looking for a miracle, do more do more somersaults, right? Yeah, Ghost said the miracle to somersault ratio, which is very good. That's a very good stuff. Watching Joe go through the 7 phases of grief right before our very Catholics win again. How would the Eucharist be confirmed? Good question, and I don't think it ever could be. Then it would be explainable, and then it would no longer be a miracle. Ghost. We would be able to explain it. I honestly don't know. I don't know how you could ever substantiate the claim of the Eucharist.
So one of the characteristics of a miracle is just that we can't explain it, I
Right.
guess.
Right. I think honestly, I think a lot of this boils down to like crap definitions, but yeah, so definition 1 is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by nature or scientific law, and therefore is considered to be the work of a divine agency. The second was a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. So yeah, a portion of it, at least by definition, has to
The
do with
third is an amazing product or achievement or an outstanding example of something,
yeah,
which
which
is a
kind of
little more
it ties
vague.
in it ties into the others. But yeah, it's something that can't be explained. That's why I thought not bringing up the Eucharist was very interesting, because the Eucharist would be an example of something that by definition, I think, and tell me if you disagree, but I think would be a miracle because it's inexplicable by nature and by scientific law. Whereas birth, we can explain by natural and scientific law. So therefore, by definition, it would not be miraculous. However, if you trace the birth thing back, like we talked about, I think at the core of it, at the origin of it, I think it would be. But the Eucharist is kind of just always that way. It continues to be inexplicable. Whereas birth, we've figured out how to explain it by natural and scientific law.
Well, this third definition doesn't specify like anything about the natural law or the being improbable. It's just saying something that's like a marvel or
Right.
a wonder. So
Be-
it's not really. So that's like there's like 3 different categories.
Right. And if you think about that's just like the English language, right? Where we say, I love pizza, I love my mom, I love my newborn daughter. We all mean it kind of in a different way in a different context. This is just how our stupid ass language works. So you have these 3 definitions ranging from like relatively specific, having to do with reality, natural and scientific law, something that's a bit more esoteric-ish, and then something that's like, it's a miracle that like I got those boots on sale last week. That's how I see
Yeah.
the third one, is like that kind of miracle. Like the I love pizza versus I love my newborn daughter. Ruth said, my dad was a minister, a holy man of God, and he was never healed from the stroke he had. I don't think asking someone how they are a loving God has anything to do with them being healed or not. In response to Move, I got this, saying that I was not loving God enough. I assume he was talking to me. If miracles can't be confirmed by nature, then they just become strongly held opinions. Ooh, that becomes hard. If miracles can't be confirmed by nature, they just become strongly held opinions. So then, I mean,
What I mean by that is if miracles inherently can't be confirmed, if they inherently have this like kind of hazy cloud around them
Mhm.
that requires some form of belief, then I mean, I just don't see the point really in calling something a miracle at that point because it doesn't have a real definition.
I agree. I think a lot of this is semantic. The longer we've done this, the deeper we've gone, the more I'm realizing like a lot of it is semantic. I almost think that if something happens in this reality that we live in and experience and sense that doesn't align with, somebody's giving feedback, mute please, if it doesn't align with like the natural law of this reality, I think just anything like that would be called a miracle. So that would include healing, and any
And
kind of
if
phenomena.
miracles are, let's see, what someone was saying something earlier. Let me think about this for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Another one, it's a good point, Ghost. Sometimes I'm actively still learning about, and that was the confirmed by nature thing that he's now thinking of, and then he'll come back. Hey, chat and host, skeptically pissed. What's going on? I like the name, very clever. I think Ghost is saying more so, how can we confirm the end goal is actually achieved? Is that right? Now, how does it happen? Not how does it happen, but did it actually happen? Well, right. But, well, no. Not how does it happen, but did it actually happen?
All right, I thought of what I was going to say.
Okay, go ahead.
If miracles are things that we can't explain or we can't explain at the time, then over time, if knowledge increases, then that would be an explanation as to why miracles decrease because they're mutually exclusive, right? Like the more knowledge increases, the less mystery we have. Therefore, there would be less miracles. I'm just thinking,
Yeah, no, in a sense, for sure. So I think a lot of it is just, yeah, gnosis. Like it's knowledge that we're talking about. So as knowledge grows, things that were once technically miracles become not miracles. So that's why I kind of like boiled it down to, maybe the way I see it is that something is miraculous only if, no matter the current gnosis of the human, how much knowledge we have is irrelevant on any scale of time, the thing cannot be explained by or within the conceptual confinements of this reality. So if whether it was 1,000 years ago or 500 million years from now, when we've peaked technologically or whatever, it could never be explained because it in and of itself lies outside of the conceptual reality of us, of here. I think that would be the only thing that would be objectively and timelessly a miracle. Everything else is just kind of on this scale, seemingly, of what was miraculous 1,000 years ago, like we fully grasp and understand now. And what is miraculous today, 1,000 years from now, we'll fully grasp and understand. I feel like those are circumstantially miracles or situationally miracles. Maybe that, I don't know. I got to think about this more. It's interesting. I didn't think I would think this deeply tonight, to be honest with you, because I thought I had a very clear understanding of how I viewed this, but I have you have all proven me wrong as usual.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
2 years ago, I was involved in a black ice accident and got hit by a quick fill gas tanker. I was T-boning the back passenger, the rear panel, or right in the back.
Yeah.
And the where I was hit was right next to my gas tank, and my car. I don't know what it did because I lost consciousness, but my car kind of like ended up way over. It flipped over, and I came to, and for some reason I was able to get power on my car, and I was able to get out of my car through the sunroof, and the gas tanker that hit me went off the side of the road and slid down and fell over onto his his driver's side. And as he's sliding down the ditch, the guardrail comes through his window of the cab of his truck. And this is all things that I hear about after the fact. But if I look at it that I'm still here as being a miracle, because in all reality, I probably should have died in that accident. I mean, I guess being in a Subaru had something to do with it, and a curtain airbag. But if that curtain airbag had failed or it wasn't there, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. And the fact that it was a freshly filled gas tanker and there was no gas leaks from that. There was no gas leaks. The only gas leak was from the gas tanker's cab gas tank. And there was no explosions, no nothing. And everybody they were like, oh, it was your late husband looking out for you. It was angels. It was this. It was God. Oh, that's a miracle how you lived. And I mean, I look at it as a miracle, but it could have been just like it was a good Subaru and it had good safety measures in the car, and it was just coincidence that everything turned out the way it did.
Right.
I know it could be either or, but I look at it as it was miraculous that there was no explosions, I guess. You know,
I mean, yeah.
would you consider that a miracle? I mean,
So I don't know. As you were
I don't
just
know.
talking, I think you actually made a good point. So I think by the definitions that we're working with, and then I have to go. Kat went out and got dinner, so I got to run for the night. But I think working off the definitions that we have been 1 and 2, ignoring 3 because it's a Valley girl who got an extra shot of espresso in her Starbucks coffee. But off of 1 and 2, that type of event, could it probably be explained by natural or scientific law? Well, sure, because physics and trajectory and the amount of fuel based on where the vehicles hit, like you could, but it's still a highly improbable or extraordinary event that had welcome consequences. So it was just as you were telling that story, I was reading the definitions and trying to like process what you were saying. And I think maybe there are some circumstances that are and aren't, because they are not explained, or they are explainable by natural or scientific law, but are simultaneously extremely improbable and extraordinary events. I think that's possible in some situations too. So I don't know. I have a lot of stuff that I genuinely want to think about after this. This has very much sparked philosophical questions for me about miracles, and this was a very, very interesting talk. But I do have to go. But skeptically pissed, I want to read what he said, he or she, because I don't think we've had you around before. It said, I don't think there is a way to demonstrate that miracles are breaking natural law. At best, it would be an unexplained event or an event in natural law that we have not discovered yet, which we kind of touched on. And so, in short, I think miracles could possibly be something that no matter what our discovery level was, peak discovery 100,000 years from now, it could never be explained, because what happened, whatever it was, lies outside of the conceptual reality of human beings, where it is not something that we could ever measure, because it's not something that interacts with our world like everything else in our world. That's the only thing that I could really see, like on a larger scale, that would be permanently and forever, timelessly considered to be a miracle. Other things, like we've all talked about, I think at some time or under some circumstance, we wouldn't be able to classify it by definition as a miracle. Peace be with you said, I do not follow religion. I do not believe in hocus pocus, and I can prove this. Can I please come up? No, because we don't know you. But if you join Discord, religious or not, come into Discord, hang out with us for a while, and then yes, you can come up. After a bit of time in Discord, then you can join the voice channel, and then you can come up as long as you're civil. No one here will have a problem with you. Induction and uniformity of nature are miracles to begin with. So is each constant and law we identify. I am not asking you to demonstrate. I have to go, though, because my beautiful, pregnant, lovely wife just brought food home. So any of the new people, if you're here or if you're interested in talking with us next time we do this, join the Discord. There's a link pinned to the top of the live chat. There's a link in the description of the video. Don't care what you believe. Don't care if you're religious. Don't care if you're an atheist. Doesn't really matter, as long as you're civil and you actually want to have at least halfway intelligent conversations about stuff and try to figure things out and understand how people think. We would love to have you. So feel free and welcome to come. We do a handful of these a week. Tuesday is topic discussion that everybody votes on in Discord, and that's what we do. Thursday, we read something and talk about outside of the Bible. So Mesopotamian texts, apocryphal texts, things that Christians cringe if they know that we were reading them. And then Sunday, we read something from the canon and exegetically pick it apart. With that, this was great, and I love you guys, and I'm going to go eat with my beautiful pregnant wife. So have a lovely night, and I'll see you Thursday for the Book of Giants. Nat, it was good to see you, by the way. Get that girl fed. I'm working on it. Skeptically Pissed, come to Discord. We'd love to have you. All right, I love you guys. I'm out. Have a good night.